Somewhere right now there's a Land Cruiser sitting in the sun with more than 300,000 miles on it, and the body is slowly rusting away around an engine that flatly refuses to die. The paint's gone chalky. The carpet smells like a tackle box. The seats are split at the seams, and you turn the key and it catches on the first crank every single time, like it's a little insulted you even doubted it. I watched a tear down on one of these not long ago. A 1994 truck, 343,000 miles, and it had finally failed a compression test. One cylinder down, about 45%. So they pulled it apart to see what killed it. And here's the thing. The bottom end was fine. The crank was fine. This engine had survived a crash hard enough to destroy the alternator and crack the oil pan. And it still held good compression on 5 of its 6 cylinders. The thing that finally beat it was a little dirt. Some grit that snuck past a cheap aftermarket air filter and scored one cylinder wall. That's it. That's what it took to slow this thing down. Dirt. So when somebody slaps a title on a video that says these SUVs never break down, that you'll buy one once and drive it forever, I want to be straight with you right out of the gate, because honest is the whole reason you clicked on me and not one of the other guys. Never is a lie. Forever is a lie. Nothing built by human hands runs forever, and anybody who tells you it does is reaching for your wallet. But underneath that clickbait, there is a real thing, and it's worth your time. A small handful of these trucks get stupidly, almost absurdly close to forever, and the reason they do is the exact opposite of what the brochure brags about. It is not the clever stuff, it's the boring stuff. It's the plain old-fashioned engineering the entire industry is quietly deleting from new cars right now, one little piece at a time, because there is no money in an engine that lasts 300,000 miles. I've had a few hundred of these engines apart over the years, the legends and the garbage both. And once you've seen what's actually inside one, you stop guessing and you start knowing. You can feel a design that was built to last. You can put your hands on it. So here's what I'm going to do for you. 10 SUVs that get closer to forever than anything else on the road. For each one, I'll tell you exactly why, what's inside it that makes it go the distance. And just as important, I'll tell you the one thing that still goes wrong, because every single truck on this list has a weak spot, and the people who make these lists never mention them. Stick around for the one near the top that almost everybody buys for exactly the wrong reason. And there's a part toward the end that should make you a little angry, because it's about what they took out. And why. Give me the next half hour and I promise you will never get talked into the wrong used SUV again. Let me lay one quick piece of groundwork, because it makes everything after it click into place. When a mechanic calls an engine bulletproof, he does not mean it can't break. He means the heart of it, the block and the crank and the rods, the bottom end is built so far inside its own limits that under normal driving, it basically never wears out. The body will rust. The little stuff will fail, but the heart just keeps beating. And there is a recipe for that. And it's nearly the same recipe on every truck I'm about to show you. Natural aspiration, meaning no turbocharger cramming heat and pressure into the pistons and cooking the oil. A timing chain that lives down inside the engine and gets bathed in oil, or at the very least a timing belt you actually change on schedule instead of pretending it isn't there. Cast iron where the stress lives, because iron doesn't flex and crack under heat the way you'd worry about. It just sits there and takes it decade after decade. Fuel delivered the old proven way instead of sprayed straight into the cylinder, where it can wash the oil right off the walls, and a tune that leaves power on the table instead of wringing out every last horse. That's the secret. That's the whole magic trick. Now watch how each of these either follows that recipe or pays the price for breaking it. We're counting down. Number 10. The Honda Element. I know it looks like a refrigerator a raccoon could live in, and Honda stopped building it back in 2011. But hear me out, because this is the kind of pick that separates somebody who knows from somebody who read a list. Under that boxy plastic body sits Honda's K24, a 2.4-liter four-cylinder that is, no exaggeration, one of the most reliable engines anybody has ever bolted into a car. Naturally aspirated, timing chain, not a belt. Port fuel injection, the good, clean kind. It is so unburstable that people pull these motors out of dead elements and drop them into other cars just to get a few more decades out of them. It's the same basic motor Honda put in millions of Accords and CR-Vs, so by the time it landed in the Element, every bug had been hunted out of it, and it sips oil and shrugs off neglect like few engines ever have. The catch? It's age and rust now. These trucks are old, and the rear wheel arches and the rear hatch like to rot. So you're buying a clean body with a forever engine, not the other way around. Find a rust-free one, and it'll outlive your next 3 phones. Number 9, the Honda CR-V, and this one comes with a warning label. So listen close. The CR-V earned its reputation honestly. Consumer Reports recommended it something like 21 years running, and the reason was that same beautiful K24 engine we just talked about, the naturally aspirated 2.4. Those generations, roughly the early 2000s up through about 2014, are about as close to a sure thing as a used compact SUV gets. But then Honda decided to chase fuel economy, and starting in 2017, they swapped that bulletproof motor for a little 1.5-liter turbo with direct injection. And that engine, in cold weather and on short trips, has a nasty habit of washing raw gasoline down the cylinder walls and into the oil pan. It's almost baked into the design. A tiny turbo engine takes longer to come up to temperature, and direct injection fires the fuel hard and deep into a cylinder that's still cold. So, on a short winter run, a little of that gas never burns and slips right past the rings. Owners started noticing the oil level on the dipstick going up instead of down, a gasoline smell in the cabin, the heater going weak, some of them stalling out. There were class action lawsuits. Honda extended the powertrain warranty to 6 years to calm everybody down. So here's the move. The durable CR-V is the naturally aspirated one. The improved one diluted its own oil. That right there is the whole story of this list in one truck. Number 8, the Subaru Forester and its cousin, the Outback. And I'm going to be honest with you in a way most of these lists won't. The Subaru deserves a spot. In the big longevity studies, it's just about the only thing near the top, wearing a badge that isn't Toyota or Honda, and that flat boxer engine with standard all-wheel drive will claw through a snowstorm that leaves everything else in the ditch. But Subaru has a history, and you need to know it before you sign anything. The old 2.5, the EJ25, was famous, and not in a good way, for blowing head gaskets right around 100,000 miles. It usually starts as a slow seep of oil or coolant, and it gets expensive. Part of that's just the shape of the thing. A boxer engine lies down flat, so the oil sits right up against the head gaskets instead of draining away from them, and a so-so gasket gives up over time. Then they replaced it with the newer FB25 which is genuinely better timing chain instead of a belt. A smarter head gasket design, but the early ones, the non-turbo cars from about 2011 to 2014, burned oil badly enough that there was an oil consumption settlement over it. So the sweet spot is a later FB engine, roughly 2015 and up, and you keep an eye on the oil. Buy it right, and it's a tank. Buy it blind, and you're rebuilding a top end. Number 7. The Toyota Highlander. And now we're getting into the part of the list where the engines just don't quit. The Highlander, for most of its life, runs Toyota's 3.5 liter V6, the 2GR, and that is one of the great modern engines. Smooth, strong, and it'll do 250,000 miles on oil changes and not much else. Toyota also built it as a hybrid, and Toyota's hybrid system has one of the best long-term track records of anything on the road. So don't you dare be scared of it. Those battery packs and that electric drive routinely sail past 200,000 miles, and the gas engine in a hybrid actually works less hard, not more. So it tends to last longer, not shorter. Most people get that exactly backwards. The one honest wart on the early 2GR engines, the ones built up to about the spring of 2008. There's a rubber oil supply hose feeding the variable valve timing that can get brittle and rupture, and when it lets go, it can dump the engine's oil in about 30 seconds. Toyota ran a free campaign to fix it and later switched to an all-metal line. So on an older one, you check that the line's been done, or you spend a little and upgrade it to the metal piece. Do that, and the engine is essentially immortal. Number 6, the Honda Pilot and its fancy cousin, the Acura MDX. Since they share the same heart, that heart is the J35, Honda's 3.5 V6, and as a piece of metal, it is genuinely tough. Good for well past 200,000 miles. But Honda did a thing to it, and this is the second time on this list you'll hear this exact kind of story. To save you maybe 1 or 2 miles per gallon on the highway, Honda added a system that shuts down 3 of the 6 cylinders when you're cruising. They call it variable cylinder management. And on a lot of these, when those cylinders are sitting there dead, the engine pulls oil past the rings and burns it, fouls the spark plugs, and the constant switching back and forth beats the engine, mounts to death, and can even hammer the transmission. The dead cylinders pull a kind of vacuum that drags oil up past the rings, and some of these will burn through a quart of oil every 1,000 miles, a rate the company waved off as normal. Acura's tell is almost funny. On some of theirs, they quietly deleted the little dashboard light that told you the system was even working, which is one way to cut down on the complaints. There have been lawsuits and warranty extensions over it as recently as last year. The fix the owners swear by is a little device that simply keeps the system from ever switching off, and the engine goes back to running like the bulletproof V6 it always was. Toyota and Lexus, for the most part, never went down this road on their V6s. Tells you something. Number 5, the Lexus RX, and here's where I tell you about the one people buy for the wrong reason. The RX is the best-selling luxury crossover there is, and folks buy it for the badge and the soft leather and the quiet ride. That's fine. But the actual reason to buy one is hiding under the hood, and it's the same 2GR V6 out of the Highlander and the Camry, an engine that does not care how many miles you pile on. It's a timing chain V6 with no turbo and none of the cylinder tricks, the same plain, proven recipe quietly doing its job under a heated leather seat. You are essentially getting a Camry that will run forever, wearing a tuxedo. So the move is to stop paying for the badge and start paying for the engine, and buy the one with a clean service history. Same honest caveat as the Highlander, by the way. The earlier ones, the RX 350 from about 07 to 09, have that same rubber oil line. So check it's been handled, and steer clear of the really old RX 300 and 330 because that earlier V6 had a sludge problem that the later engine fixed. Get a clean later one, and it's a luxury car you'll get bored of long before it gets tired. Number 4, the Lexus GX. And now we leave the car-based crossovers behind and get into the real iron. The GX is, no kidding, a Land Cruiser in a nice suit. It rides on a proper truck frame. It shares its bones with the Toyota that drives across deserts, and under the hood is a big, lazy, naturally aspirated V8. The older GX 470 runs the 4.7, the 2UZ, cast iron block, conservative tune, an engine that routinely goes 300,000 miles. The newer GX 460 runs a 4.6 V8, same philosophy. The one black mark? Back in 2010, the brand new GX 460 got flagged by Consumer Reports for a stability control issue. The back end could slide out too far if you lifted off the gas hard in a corner. Toyota stopped selling it, recalled about 9,400 of them, pushed out a software fix in roughly 2 weeks, and the warning got lifted, fixed long ago. And here's the tell that it was never really a broken truck. The nearly identical 4Runner on the same frame didn't do it. The Lexus just carried more weight, set up a little differently, and the software wasn't tuned for it. A calibration problem patched with a download. The real downside today is just that it's a heavy V8 truck. So it drinks premium fuel, and it isn't cheap to feed. That's the price of the iron. Number 3, the Toyota Sequoia. And this one isn't my opinion, it's the data. In the big longevity analysis that looks at hundreds of millions of vehicles, the Sequoia has been ranked the single SUV most likely to reach 250,000 miles, with something close to a 40% chance of getting there. The average vehicle, under 5%. So the Sequoia is roughly 8 times more likely to hit 250,000 miles than whatever the average is. Why? A giant, low-stress, naturally aspirated V8 doing easy work in a big body. Cast iron block, forged crankshaft, low compression, the whole thing built to haul a heavy truck around without ever breaking a sweat. The older ones use the 4.7, the 2UZ, the same legend that's in the Land Cruiser. The newer ones use the 5.7, the 3UR, even stronger. Here's the honest part, and it matters. That older 4.7 uses a timing belt, not a chain, and it must be changed around 90,000 miles because on the later versions, if that belt snaps, it'll bend your valves. The bigger 5.7 uses a chain you never have to service, but as it ages, it tends to weep oil from the top of the engine, and that's a real repair bill when it comes due. Getting at that leak means pulling a lot of the top end apart. So you're looking at 4 figures of labor, not a quick afternoon fix. And both of them, let's be real, drink fuel like it's free, but the engine itself, it does not stop. Number 2, the Toyota 4Runner, and this is the one I'd point a friend to without blinking. The 4Runner has run basically the same simple, honest recipe for around 20 years. A proper truck frame, a 4-liter naturally aspirated V6, the 1GR, with a timing chain, a strong cooling system, and a real resistance to the head gasket trouble that plagues lesser engines. There's almost nothing clever on it to break. It's crude on the highway, it's thirsty, the ride is trucky, and that's exactly why it lasts. But I owe you the honest caveat, and it's a big one if you live where they salt the roads. On the older 4Runners, the frames could rust badly. Toyota paid out a $3.4 billion settlement over rusty frames on its trucks. The Tacoma and Tundra and Sequoia and 4Runner owners had to fight their own separate battle to get noticed. So the engine and the drivetrain will outlive the planet, but the frame is only as good as the rust proofing under it. In the salt belt, you get under one and you look at that frame before you ever look at the odometer. Find a clean frame or one that lived its life in a dry state, and you've got a truck that'll quietly embarrass vehicles worth 3 times the money. And number one, there was never any suspense, was there? The Toyota Land Cruiser, this is the truck from the story I opened with, the one rusting away around an engine that won't die. The Land Cruiser is the reason the word reliable has a face. Toyota built this thing for the parts of the world where breaking down doesn't mean a tow truck, it means trouble. The Australian outback, the African trade routes, the Middle Eastern desert, the aid agencies, the United Nations, the Red Cross. They spec Land Cruisers because the engine cannot fail and a guy with hand tools can fix it. The classic gasoline engines, the 4.5 inline 6 and the 4.7 V8 have cast iron blocks and forged internals built like artillery shells, tuned so gently they barely know they're working. There are documented examples of that V8 rolling past 1 million miles on nothing more exotic than a religious 5,000-mile oil change. The diesel versions with no turbo and a simple mechanical fuel pump will run on bad fuel and bad decisions and clock past 500,000 miles. On the gasoline V8, you do have to change the timing belt on schedule, same as the Sequoia, but that's just routine upkeep, not a flaw. Toyota engineers reportedly designed these to a 300,000 mile minimum, and in the real world, the body rusts off long before the engine gives up compression. The honest catch is just money. A Land Cruiser is thirsty and it's expensive to buy, even used, but that's the entire point. You pay up front once for something that gets as close to forever as a machine gets. Now here's the part I told you might make you a little angry. Sit with this one for a second. Look back over that whole list. The thing that makes every one of those trucks last is the same handful of plain, unsexy decisions. No turbo, a chain instead of a belt, iron where it counts, fuel injected the old way, a gentle tune, simple, fixable, understandable engineering. So here's the uncomfortable question. If that recipe works so well, if it's so obviously better at lasting, why is the entire industry walking away from it as fast as it can? And the answer is the answer to almost everything. There is no money in an engine that lasts 300,000 miles. There's no money in simple. There's a great deal of money in complicated. A turbocharged, direct injected, small displacement engine looks fantastic on the sticker. Great economy, great horsepower number, low emissions score, and it tends to start needing expensive things right about the time the warranty waves. goodbye. A sealed system you're not allowed to open is a system only the dealer can touch. The diagnostics get locked behind tools and software only the dealer has. So the simple job you use to knock out in your own driveway now comes with an appointment and an invoice. A part marketed as lifetime is a part that fails on somebody else's schedule, not yours. None of that is an accident. It's a business model. Complexity creates dependence, and dependence is where the profit lives. And if you want the proof, you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at what Toyota itself did. The company that wrote the entire playbook on durability, the company that built that immortal V8 in the Land Cruiser and the Sequoia, just took that V8 out of the new Land Cruiser and replaced it with a downsized twin turbo V6. Not because the turbo will last longer. It won't. They did it because it scores better on fuel economy and emissions, and it costs less to build. Even the King of Forever is being pushed by rules and by the spreadsheet toward the very complexity that the King of Forever spent 50 years proving you don't need. That should tell you everything about which way the wind is blowing. So let me step back from the grease for a minute, because this is about more than which you use truck to buy. There is something quietly valuable about owning a machine you can actually understand, a thing you can keep alive with your own two hands, that rewards you for taking care of it, that doesn't hold its own guts hostage behind a dealership login. That used to just be what a car was. You owned it all the way down. You could open it up on a Saturday, figure out what was wrong, fix it with a socket set and a manual, and the machine would thank you by running another 100,000 miles. And one part at a time, that's being taken from you and sold back as convenience. A sealed box, a subscription, a lifetime that quietly means the length of the warranty, and not 1 mile more. The trucks on this list are the last of a different idea. The idea that a thing should be built to outlive its loan, to be fixed instead of replaced, to be yours instead of rented. That's worth holding on to. Not because old is automatically better. It isn't. But because honest engineering treats you like the owner, and a lot of what we're sold treats you like a customer who's never supposed to stop paying. So here's what I want you to actually do with all this. First, when you read the word reliable on a listing, ignore it and go find out which engine is in that specific truck and how that specific engine was built. The badge is not the answer. The engine code is. Second, lean toward the boring recipe. Naturally aspirated over turbo, a chain over a belt, or a belt that's actually been changed. The simpler, the better. Third, and this is the one nobody tells you, every truck on this list has a known weak spot. So learn the one for whatever you're buying and check it before you hand over a dime. The Subaru's oil habit, the Honda V6 cylinder shutoff, the early Toyota V6 rubber oil line, the truck frames in the salt belt, the Sequoia's timing belt. Find the catch, confirm it's handled, and you've just dodged the one repair that turns a forever truck into a money pit. Do that and picture where it puts you. You're scrolling through listings, and where everybody else sees a scary number, 180,000, 200,000 miles, and clicks away in fear, you see a properly built engine that's barely getting started. You hear a faint tick at a cold start, and you know whether it's nothing or something. You walk into the dealership and you don't get talked into a payment on a sealed box. You buy the right thing once, you keep it alive yourself, and you watch that odometer roll past numbers that would terrify the people who paid twice as much for half the truck. That's the whole game. And now you know how to play it. So tell me something down in the comments, because I read every one of them. And honestly, they're the best part of doing this. What's the highest mileage vehicle you have ever personally owned. What was it? How far did it go? And what finally killed it? The engine or everything around it? And where are you? Because somebody in the salt belt and somebody in the dry desert are living in two completely different worlds when it comes to which of these survives. I want to hear the real numbers, the ones you watched, roll over with your own eyes. If this was useful, subscribe, because the next one is one I've been wanting to do for a while, and it ties directly into everything we just talked about. We're going after the great lie of the sealed box, lifetime fluids. The transmission that's supposedly filled for life, the fluid, you're told, never needs changing. I'm going to show you who actually profits when lifetime turns out to mean about 120,000 miles. And the simple thing you can do that quietly doubles how long your gearbox lasts. You will not believe how cheap the fix is or how much they'd rather you didn't know it. Until then, do me one favor, go pop your hood, find out what's actually under there, and learn its name. The thing that carries you around every day deserves at least that much. I'll see you in the next one.